Hey, this is Mike with RPS Water Pumps, and I'm out here actually at the RPS well we use every day to keep our facilities supplied with our pressurized well water. And we actually had a couple problems with it this morning. We got some complaints that the water pressure had dropped out and we couldn't use the sink or flush the toilet. So we quickly ran out here, did a little bit of troubleshooting. We think we need to do a pressure switch replacement. I'm going to walk you through all those steps, how we came to that conclusion, so you can also troubleshoot and maintain your well and pressure system yourself. Before we get started with the troubleshooting, let's go over some of the tools that might make this a little bit easier. First of all, we've got our multimeter here. This will help check for voltage. Got a couple of wrenches in case we need to do a little bit of plumbing work. We have our wire stripper. We have a little bit set. And then we do have our PTFE tape, also called Teflon tape, in case we need to do any plumbing. So if you have a system like us, we have our well pump down in the well, but it also pressurizes the water in our pressure tank here. And the way we control that is through a pressure switch. Pressure switches here, usually they're gray with a cover on top. And this is gonna be a very common failure point if you are experiencing low pressure, your pump not starting up. And so in this case, we kind of got everything going early in the day, enough to get us through the day. I'll talk about how we did that. And so we do have pressure. But if I take this switch off, or the cover off this switch, so let's talk a little bit about what's going on inside this pressure switch. And this is actually controlling the power going to the pump. And so from our breaker, we're running our power over here. And this is a 2-pole breaker because this is a 240 volt pump. And so the input is coming, I believe that's coming in right here on our red and over here on our black. And so this would be line 1 and this would be line 2 of our 240 volt. And then our output to the pump, output 1 would be here and output 2. And these outputs are running over to our starter box. And so the way it goes is we go from our breaker into our pressure switch, and then from our pressure switch into our starter box if we have a 3-wire submersible pump, which is pretty common. If you have a 2-wire submersible pump, then those 2 wires are coming off of here and going straight down into your pump and bypassing any sort of starter box. And so very basic. And what happens with this pressure switch is there's these contacts that go back and forth. And so you can see the electricity when the contacts close are going to come in here, make a loop around and go back out for line 1, come in here, make a loop around out and go around for line 2. And what can happen over time is there's these little pads here that actually make the physical contact. They're kind of hard to see, and those can get corroded over time as that switch opens and closes. And so what's happening here is when this closes, we don't make great contact, and so the pump isn't starting. And I can kind of look in here, you can see it's pretty dirty, dusty. Another super common issue that happens with this is if you have a lot of ants around, for some reason ants are just attracted, maybe the magnetic field in there, and they get in between those contacts and get squashed, and that also causes the break in the electrical connection. So electricity can't flow through there because you either have the carbon buildup or some sort of ant or other bug that gets in those. So this is usually one of the most common issues and the easiest and first thing to check when you experience no water or lack of pressure on a pressurized system. So one thing I should note for safety is this is currently energized. I have not shut off the breaker, so I want to be very careful. In this case, I'm using a multimeter probe. These are insulated probes. You could also use a dry stick, a piece of plastic, just no metal if you're going to be poking in there. And I can very carefully come in here and I can push the contacts close and override it. In that case, I saw the contacts close and I can actually hear and feel that the pump turned on. And so like I mentioned, I came out this morning because we were out of water and I did have to do a quick little maintenance just to get this running throughout the day. What I'm looking down in there is I could see the carbon buildup earlier today. And what I went ahead and did was I went and shut off the power. I'll show you that in a second here. But I have this little multi-tool here with a little filing attachment. I'll show you in a second how I was able just to clean the carbon off of those contacts. But what I noticed when I did that was we actually have a burnt contact over on the right. It just doesn't look too great. So I decided a quick fix, get us through the day, get us through the next couple of days. And then I am going to do a pressure switch replacement here in a couple of minutes because I just don't like how those contacts are looking. And while it'll get us through the short-term cleaning, this issue is just going to come back. So it's better to do a replacement, get another 10 years before I have to come out here and mess with it again. So let's head over. We're going to go over and shut off the breaker before we do anything else here because we don't want to zap ourselves. I'm over here at our electrical panel, open this up. Luckily, I labeled this last time. We have our well breaker here. This is a 240 volt, 20 amp breaker. I'm gonna shut this off so I can safely work on the rest of the system. So I'm back over here at our pressure switch. I'm gonna use my multimeter just to double check that we got the right breaker, it wasn't mislabeled before I really start diving in. Probe our 2 connection points. I'm gonna check across here. I know my switch is open. And so I check across here and I'll see if I have any voltage, and basically nothing, no voltage there. I'll check my other one, make sure I got both breakers. Yep, and those are off. If your switch is closed, you still might want to be a little careful here in case you had a bad pump and you didn't actually get it. You can check from here to a ground point, and yep, no voltage there. From there to a ground point, no voltage. And again, both of these to some sort of ground point. Yeah, no voltage on any of these, safe to touch. We're not gonna get shocked now that we start working on this. So like I mentioned, if you're in a bit of a bind, you can usually get these pressure switches going again with a little file or a sandpaper. And you just wanna very carefully come in here and just clean off those contacts. You can see where they're gonna make contact. You come in there, the file, just kind of scrape them off both sides there. I'm gonna be careful, these are little spring-loaded contacts. We don't wanna put too much pressure on them, but if everything's off, you can come in here and just get the carbon buildup or any other material off of those. Like I said, I did that this morning and it started getting everything running again. We were able to run the rest of the day without any issue. But like I mentioned, down in there, this contact over here on the far right, it's about half burned, just doesn't look great. And so this did get everything going, but I am gonna go ahead and replace this pressure switch at the same time so I don't have to think about it again. So if you're coming to do a replacement later, you might need to drain the pressure tank of all the pressure so we can work on the plumbing fittings. Unfortunately, I don't have a shut off for the pressure tank, so I need to drain the water out of it before I can replace this pressure switch. I'm gonna start by undoing all the wires and getting this conduit disconnected from our pressure switch. So we drained some of the pressure from the tank. Let's go ahead, we'll pull off our pressure switch and see what we're working with here. Great, still got a little water there, but we were able to get this out. You can see what we have here is we have the female pipe thread on this side. Then we have a little brass nipple. Unfortunately, I don't have another one of those, so we're gonna have to get this brass nipple out and reuse it in this case. Great, not too bad. I was able to get that nipple out without too much damage to the threads. I think we're gonna be fine here. For anybody familiar with the solar pump world, we have two different types of pressure switches. We have a standard action pressure switch, which is used for AC pumps. And then we also have a reverse action pressure switch, which is more common with solar pumps. Today we're using our standard action version. Looks very similar to the one down below that we took off. It's a good sign. Pull off the cover here. You can see on the inside of this one, we're saying, it's looking like this is a 20-40 pressure switch. That means it cuts in at 20 PSI and cuts off at 40 PSI. It's gonna be a little bit low for us, and so I'm gonna go, once I get this hooked up, adjust our set points. I really want this more about like a 40-60 pressure switch, maybe a 35-55, get that 20 PSI offset from the low to the high pressure. I'm gonna clean off these threads a little bit and then apply the PTFE Teflon tape to make sure we have a waterproof seal. With this stuff, we're working with brass fittings, so they're a little softer than if we're working with stainless steel. I know I'm not doing it the best way. I'm going one direction on one side of the threads and the other direction on the other side of the threads. I think we're gonna be fine here. If it was stainless steel, I'd take my time and I'd go with the direction of the threads on both sides of it. But since we have a short little nipple and a really wide piece of Teflon tape, I'm just taking the easy way and doing the whole thing at once. Again, it's brass, it's very malleable. I think we're gonna get a nice waterproof connection here. So we have our nipple covered in Teflon tape. We have our new pressure switch here. I'm gonna thread this in. This also is a dual pole, so that means we have the two different poles here, good for 120 and 240 volt pumps. If you have a three-phase pump, you got three wires coming in from your AC power, you're gonna need a three-phase pressure switch. This is a two-pole. And go there, get this screwed in. We'll keep going to a pretty snug. I don't go too snug and accidentally break anything like our nipple there, but I'm gonna go tight enough that I'm not concerned about having any leaking, because once I get this wire hooked up, if I have to tighten it anymore, I gotta pull the wire off to get a couple more turns there. So I'm gonna go fairly tight. It's feeling pretty good. I'm gonna get us another 3/4 rotation, get everything lined up where I want it. Great. Yep, snug it up real nice. I'm gonna get this right back into position. There we have it. We'll start hooking up our electrical wire. Got it snugged up here. Now I'm gonna get our electrical connections into place. I won't be using this wire grommet because we do have our conduit. It's gonna go right on our pressure switch. Before I get in there, I'm gonna do a quick check of the wires. Everything's looking pretty good here. I don't totally love the condition of the wires, but I think I'm gonna leave it. I'd rather not have to cut it off and get a little short there. I'm just gonna clean up those strands a little bit. This one's a medium-sized wire. It's kind of a smaller screw, so In this case, the last installer split the strands apart, kind of twisted the two sides up. Instead of redoing it all, I'm just gonna go with what he did last time. If you really wanna jump in here, you get some spade connections, crimp those on if you really want a nice connection there, but I think we're gonna be just fine for another 10 plus years. Get these wires back through. Great, our conduit's reinstalled. Nice part is I took a picture of our wire color order. Let me pull that up. I always think I remember these things, and I'm always thankful when I took a picture later. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter which one's which, but we do want to get line 1, line 2 in the appropriate spot, and then the wires going over to our starter box. Got my screwdriver out. We'll do these final electrical connections. So we have our electrical connections done. You saw far from perfect, but very functional. We have nice contact between the wires and all of these terminal strip. The other thing is, as we separate these strands out and really try to get them well, just want to double check that none of the strands are bridging over to an adjacent terminal. So we have our new pressure switch in. We're gonna head back over the breaker, turn everything on, and see if the pump starts up. So the power's back on over here. Be a little careful now as I'm poking around. One thing I want to note on this pressure switch, this is what's called a broken pipe protection pressure switch. So that means when there's no pressure, a standard action pressure switch would normally be closed. The contacts would be closed when there's no pressure. This one has the broken pipe protection, broken pipe safety. And so if the pressure drops so far past a certain point, then the system shuts off. And in order to turn it back on, we need to move this lever from our auto position to our start position. We have to hold it in the start position until we get around 20 to 30 psi of pressure. Once we have that pressure, then it goes into automatic mode and it starts going from the low set point to the high and back and forth. But again, if we now get a broken pipe somewhere on the property and the pressure drops all the way down, then the switch is going to shut off and prevent us from flooding out, say, our house, another area, prevent the pump from running all weekend if we're out of town. So if we've done everything right, I'm going to go up to the start position, and we should hear the pump kick on and the pressure start to rise. So I put it in the start position. I can see the contacts closed. No sparking there. That's very nice. Nice, clean contacts. And I heard the pump start up. I'm going to give it around maybe a minute or two in order to get the pressure high enough in order for it to self-stay on in the auto position. So I've held it for about 4 or 5 minutes now. And I'm going to try again. I'm going to go back into the auto position. And yep, it stayed on. And so it gained enough pressure there to meet its minimum threshold. And now at this pressure, it's going to bounce between our current 20 psi and our 40 psi shutoff. Like I said, I'm going to first verify that we're hitting that 20/40. Then I'm going to adjust it upward a little bit. And if we look at the bottom of this cover, it says number 1, turn nut 1, and nut 1 is the bigger nut, clockwise to raise, cut on, and off pressure. So what that's going to do is that's going to shift the 20 and 40, both of those values up. So it'll be 25, 45, we go a little bit further, it'll go up to 30, 50, we can go a little further, it'll go 45 to kind of 65 sort of thing, and that's the range we're going to want to end in. I'm going to do this very slowly, might do it over a couple of days here and just slowly ratchet our pressure up because that 20 psi is going to be a little bit low. So like I mentioned, I want to get this a little bit higher. I'm going to give it a couple of turns here and then just keep an eye on it over the next few cycles to make sure we're getting to the right pressure range. A little bit of safety again, this is energized. You should probably turn off the breaker when you're making these adjustments, but I'm going to be pretty careful, come in here and just turn this nut 1 a couple rotations clockwise. So if you want to check that, you can open up a valve, drain the tank, get down to your low set point and watch it raise back up to your high set point. Like I mentioned, I'm just going to keep an eye over this and make some small adjustments over the next few days. I can get my cover back on here. And just like that, with a couple of tools and a little bit of knowledge, you're going to save yourself hundreds or even thousands of dollars for emergency well service call. This is a simple pressure switch. There was the strategy at the beginning, if you want to clean those contacts, get it running for the next few days while you order a replacement part. When it comes in, you get that replacement part swapped in about 15-20 minutes, and you can be back up and running. If you're interested in some of these components, here at RPS Water Pumps, we actually use the products we sell every single day. We use our pumps down in the well, we use our pressure switches. So if you need a replacement well pump, if you need replacement pressure switches, if you just need a little hand walking through your system and figuring out what's wrong, you can always give us a call. We'll be able to help you out, troubleshoot your system, and we can get that part out to you the same day so you can get your well back up and running yourself, saving you hundreds and maybe even thousands of dollars.